He knew the second he opened that door that he shouldn't have been there. The room was too quiet. Not empty quiet. The kind that presses against the ears. Vivian stood near the window, her back to him, phone hanging at her side. The city lights cut her into sharp lines. She didn't turn right away. When she did, her eyes weren't angry, they were calculating. Ethan felt it before he understood it. Something shifting under the surface. Not about him walking in. Something larger. Something already in motion. He stepped back, hand still on the handle. I didn't mean to. The hallway behind him filled with footsteps. Fast. And in that narrow space between her silence and those footsteps, something locked into place. A choice he hadn't made yet but would carry for years. The footsteps didn't slow. Ethan stepped fully into the hallway, letting the door fall shut behind him. Not slammed, not careful either. Just closed. Two security officers rounded the corner, suits too tight across the shoulders. Earpieces. Eyes already fixed on him. "Sir, you can't be on this floor." Their tone wasn't loud. That made it worse. "I was told to drop off the revised projections," he said. His voice came out steady. He was grateful for that. Assistant on 12 cleared it. They didn't answer right away. One of them touched his earpiece. Listening. Behind the door, silence. He didn't look back at it. He knew better than to look nervous. Knew better than to argue. He worked enough contract jobs in buildings like this to understand how it went. The wrong person in the wrong place became a story quickly. "Please come with us." Not a request. He nodded once. Hands visible. Calm. As they walked, he felt something settle low in his chest. Not fear exactly. Awareness. The kind that shows up when a line has been crossed and you don't know who drew it. An hour later, he sat in the glass-walled conference room 2 floors down. No phone. No laptop. The projections he'd come to deliver were still on the polished table in front of him. Untouched. Through the glass, he could see employees pretending not to stare. Averted eyes when he met them. Whispers that stopped too fast. He pressed his thumb against the edge of the table, hard enough to feel it. This wasn't about walking into the wrong office. It was too coordinated. Too clean. The door opened. Not security this time. Vivian stepped inside. Alone. Up close she looked different than she had by the window. Controlled. Composed. Her hair pulled back tighter. No sign of whatever had passed across her face earlier. She didn't sit. You entered a restricted executive space without clearance. Her voice was even. Professional. "I was directed there," he said. "I wouldn't just wander in." A pause. "I'm being told otherwise." He held her gaze. Not challenging, just steady. "By who?" She didn't answer that. Instead, she stepped closer to the table, close enough that he could see the faint line of tension at her jaw. "There's been a breach in our internal system," she said. "Confidential financial data was accessed at 8:42 p.m. He blinked once. "That's not my field." "You logged into a secure terminal at 8039. "I didn't log into anything." She studied him, not searching for panic, looking for something else. Cracks. He felt the urge to defend himself more strongly, to explain the route he'd taken from the elevator. The assistant who'd pointed him down the hall. The open door. But explaining too much can sound like guilt. "I dropped the folder," he said instead. "That's it." Her eyes flicked to the stack of papers. And then I opened a door I shouldn't have. Clearly. Silence stretched between them. Not hostile. Just tight. For a second, something shifted in her expression. Doubt. Or recognition. Then it was gone. "This company is under pressure right now," she said. "If this is sabotage, it isn't." He didn't raise his voice. Didn't lean forward. But the word landed heavy. She held his gaze a moment longer. Then she straightened. "Security will escort you out. We'll be reviewing all footage." Footage. That should have reassured him. It didn't. By the time he reached the lobby, it was nearly dark outside. The building's glass exterior reflected the city in fractured pieces. Traffic lights. Headlights. movement that didn't pause just because his world had tilted slightly. One of the guards handed him his phone. "You'll be contacted." Ethan nodded. He stepped out into the cold air and let it hit his face. He stood there longer than he needed to. He replayed it. The hallway. The assistant's polite smile. The open office door. Vivian's silence. And the footsteps. Too fast. Too ready. He pulled out his phone and checked the time. 9:07 p.m. He was late. He dialed. "Hey," he said when the line picked up. His voice softened without him meaning it to. "Yeah, I'm on my way." A small voice on the other end filled the space in his chest that had gone tight. "Did you fix the numbers?" He glanced back at the tower behind him. "Not tonight," he said. "We'll try again tomorrow." He hung up and started walking toward the subway. Halfway down the block, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "You should have left when you had the chance." The voice was male. Calm, not distorted. Just familiar in a way he couldn't place. "Who is this?" A soft exhale. "Wrong place, wrong time, Ethan." The line went dead. He stopped walking. Cars moved past him. A bus sighed to a halt nearby. Wrong place. He thought about Vivian's face in the conference room, about the way she hadn't answered when he asked who had accused him. This wasn't random. He slid the phone back into his pocket and forced himself to keep moving. At the station entrance, he caught his reflection in the dark glass. He looked the same, but something had shifted. Not panic, not anger, the quiet understanding that someone had already decided what role he was going to play, and he hadn't agreed to it. The train was late. Ethan stood near the edge of the platform, not too close. The air down there always felt used. Metal and dust and something damp that never left. He checked his phone again. No new calls. He almost hoped for another one. The first could have been a prank, a mistake, a crossed line. But it hadn't sounded careless. It had sounded certain. He shifted his weight and leaned back against the tiled wall. Across the platform, a man in a gray coat kept glancing up from his phone. Not staring, just checking. Ethan looked away first. He hated that he noticed things like that. The train finally pulled in with a long, tired screech. He boarded and took a seat near the door. Back to the wall. Clear view of the car. He told himself that was habit, not fear. When he got home, the apartment lights were still on. Second floor of a brick building that always smelled faintly of cooking oil. The hallway carpet was worn thin near the stairs. He unlocked the door quietly. "Dad, in here." His daughter sat cross-legged on the couch, homework spread out around her, pencil tucked behind her ear like she'd seen him do with a pen. "You're late," she said. Not accusing, just observant. "Yeah." He hung his coat carefully. Took his time with it. Something happened. He walked into the living room and crouched down in front of her. Her hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, already slipping. "Work's complicated," he said. She narrowed her eyes slightly. Thinking. "Did you mess up?" A corner of his mouth lifted. "Barely. No." She nodded once, as if that settled it. "Okay." He stood and went into the kitchen, filled a glass with water, drank it too fast. His hands were steady. That bothered him more than if they'd been shaking. Later, after she was asleep, he sat at the small table by the window with his laptop open. He logged into his email. Nothing from the company. He pulled up the project files he'd been hired to review. Financial forecasting, budget inconsistencies, supply chain adjustments that didn't align. He'd noticed it 2 weeks ago. Numbers that moved too cleanly, margins that shifted without explanation. He'd flagged them, sent questions. The responses had been polite, delayed, and tonight, somehow, he was the one being questioned. He scrolled through the timestamps on his own system, 8:42 p.m. He'd been in that office. That much was true. But he hadn't touched a terminal. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment. He could walk away. Contract work meant flexibility. No loyalty required, no obligation. Except He thought about the way Vivian had said, "If this is sabotage, not if you did this. If this is sabotage." Subtle difference. He opened his eyes, pulled up the internal access guidelines from the onboarding packet. Restricted executive floor required dual authorization after hours. Badge plus biometric. He didn't have either, which meant someone had used his presence or planned it. His phone buzzed again. This time, a message. Unknown number. A single image. He stared at it for a long time before reacting. It was a still frame from a hallway camera. Him, standing outside Vivian's office door. Timestamp 8:41 p.m. The angle made it look like he was checking over his shoulder. He wasn't. He remembered that second clearly. He'd been adjusting the folder under his arm, but frozen like that. It looked wrong. Another message followed. It gets worse if you push. His jaw tightened. He set the phone down carefully. Not thrown, not slammed. Carefully. He stood and walked to his daughter's room, opened the door just enough to see her curled under the blanket, one arm hanging off the bed. Breathing slow. He stayed there longer than he needed to. Then closed the door and returned to the table. He typed a single email to Vivian. Subject, footage. He kept it short. There's something you need to see. I didn't access your system. If you're reviewing video, pay attention to who cleared me to that floor. I was directed. He stared at it before hitting send. Once it left, there was no pulling back. He shut the laptop. Midnight settled heavy around the apartment. He didn't sleep much. The next morning, he walked his daughter to school. Cold air again. Brighter this time. Clear sky that didn't match the weight sitting in his chest. You're quiet, she said, swinging their joined hands once, thinking. About numbers? Something like that. At the corner, she stopped and looked up at him. You're not in trouble, right? He held her gaze. No. He hoped that was still true. She studied him another second, then nodded, satisfied, and ran toward the school doors. He watched until she disappeared inside. When he turned back toward the street, a black sedan sat parked across from his building. Engine running, windows tinted. It hadn't been there earlier. He stood still, the passenger window lowered slowly. A man in his late 30s leaned slightly toward the opening. Clean suit, controlled smile. I was hoping we could talk, the man said. Ethan didn't move closer. I don't know you. You know of me. A small pause. Daniel Armand. The name landed. Vivian's brother. Board member. Investor. Quiet public presence. Loud influence behind closed doors from what Ethan had gathered in briefings. Daniel rested his arm casually against the doorframe. You've had an interesting 24 hours, he said. Ethan said nothing. Daniel's eyes flicked briefly toward the school entrance, then back to Ethan. You seem like a practical man, I respect that. A beat. This doesn't need to become a situation. It already is, Ethan replied. Daniel's smile thinned. You were in a restricted space. There's footage. There's system activity tied to your credentials. I don't have credentials for that floor. Daniel tilted his head slightly. Details can be interpreted. The engine hummed softly. Ethan felt the street narrow around them. Morning traffic passing. People walking by without slowing. You want me to walk away, Ethan said. Smart man. And say nothing. Daniel's gaze sharpened. You were hired for projections. Stick to projections. A quiet moment passed. Ethan could feel his pulse now. Not racing, just present. And if I don't? Daniel's expression didn't change. You have a daughter, right? The words were delivered lightly, almost polite, but they didn't need emphasis. Ethan didn't look toward the school this time. He looked directly at Daniel. I didn't access your system, he said. Daniel studied him for a long second, measuring. Then he gave a small, almost regretful nod. That's unfortunate. The window slid back up. The sedan pulled away smoothly, merging into traffic without hurry. Ethan stood there until it disappeared. The threat hadn't been loud. That made it heavier. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. No response from Vivian yet. He stared at the screen for a moment. Then he did something he rarely did. He chose not to step back. He turned and started walking toward the subway again, toward the tower of glass that had already decided something about him. He wasn't sure yet whether he was walking into a mistake, but he knew this much. He wasn't going to let someone else write the ending for him. The lobby felt colder than it had the night before, not in temperature, in tone. The receptionist didn't smile this time. She made a call the moment he said his name. He stood there with his hands at his sides. No folder today. No pretense. 2 minutes later, security approached again. Different faces. "Mr. Cole," one of them said, "you've been asked to surrender your building access pending investigation." "I don't have building access," he replied. A flicker of annoyance crossed the guard's face. Paperwork didn't like being wrong. "Your temporary contractor badge." He handed it over. The plastic rectangle felt heavier leaving his fingers than it had arriving. "You're not authorized beyond the lobby." "I'm not here for a tour." The guard held his gaze for a second longer than necessary, then stepped aside. "Wait here." Ethan did. He didn't check his phone, didn't pace. He watched reflections move across the marble floor. After a while, the elevator doors opened. Vivian stepped out. No assistance. No security. Her walk was steady, shoulders squared. She wore gray today. No jewelry. She stopped a few feet from him. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "You didn't answer my email." Her eyes sharpened slightly. "I read it, and I'm handling it." He exhaled slowly. "Daniel came to my daughter's school this morning." The words landed between them without rise in volume. Something moved behind her eyes. Quick, contained. "He shouldn't have done that," she said. "So he did." A pause. "You don't know that." Ethan held her gaze. It was him. Silence again, thicker now. Employees walked past them, pretending not to hear. Phones held too close to faces. Vivian glanced toward the front desk, then back at him. "This isn't the place," she said quietly. "Then where?" She hesitated. "Not long. Conference room B. 10 minutes." She turned without waiting for agreement. Conference room B had no glass walls. No one walking past to watch. Vivian closed the door herself this time. "You're escalating this," she said. "I'm responding to it." She faced him across the table. "Not sitting. My brother believes the breach is external. He believes you were positioned." "By who?" "That's what we're determining." Ethan watched her carefully. "You don't believe I did it?" It wasn't a question. She didn't answer right away. "The footage shows you outside my office," she said. "I was outside your office. And a system log show access within 3 minutes of your badge registering on that floor. I don't have system credentials. They can be cloned." He felt something shift inside his chest. Not relief. Not exactly. "You're saying someone used me." "I'm saying," she replied evenly, "that you were convenient." The word stung more than it should have. "Convenient." He nodded once. "And Daniel?" he asked. Her jaw tightened slightly. "Daniel protects the company by threatening contractors." Her eyes flicked up sharply. "Be careful." "With what?" "With assumptions." He stepped closer to the table, palms resting lightly on the surface. "He knew about my daughter," Ethan said. "That's not assumption." Vivian held his gaze. For a second, something almost human flickered through the corporate control. Then it was gone. "You have no proof he was involved," she said. "And you have no proof I was." The room went quiet. The air between them felt charged. Not angry. Focused. He could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. Risk. Optics. Family. Company. Company. "If this breach traces back to someone internal," she said slowly, "the damage won't just be financial." "I'm aware." "It could destabilize investor confidence, trigger audits. Then you should want the truth." Her shoulders lowered a fraction. barely noticeable. "You're asking me to question my own board," she said. "I'm asking you to question the timing." She didn't respond. He straightened. "Check who cleared me to that floor," he said again. That assistant didn't hesitate, like she'd been told to expect me. Vivian turned slightly, looking at nothing for a moment, then back at him. "Her name is Marla," she said. "Then start there." Another pause. "You should leave," she said quietly. "That sounds familiar. This isn't a warning. It feels like one." She didn't deny it. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she walked around the table and stopped near the door. "I'll review the access logs personally," she said. "And Daniel?" Her hand rested on the handle. "I'll handle my brother." He studied her face. There was something there now that hadn't been before. Not trust, but not dismissal either. He nodded once and walked past her. This time, security didn't escort him out. That felt like progress. Small, but real. Outside, the sky had shifted. Clouds rolling in low and heavy. He didn't head for the subway immediately. Instead, he circled the block. Thinking. Convenient. The word kept echoing. He'd built a life around not being noticed. Quiet work. Clean contracts. No drama. And now he was at the center of something he didn't start. His phone buzzed. He glanced down. Unknown number again. He stopped walking. Opened the message. "She won't choose you." His jaw tightened. Another message followed. "Family always wins." He didn't reply. Didn't need to. He looked up at the tower again. High glass reflecting a sky that looked ready to split open. He didn't know what Vivian would do, but he knew this. If Daniel believed blood was enough to bury the truth, then Daniel had never met someone who had already lost enough not to be afraid of losing more. Ethan slid the phone back into his pocket and finally headed for the station. The pressure wasn't loud yet, but it was building. And this time, he felt it clearly. Not just around him. Inside it. It started small. An email from the firm that handled most of his contracts. Short. Polite. "We've been informed of a potential compliance issue connected to your recent engagement. Until it's clarified, we're pausing upcoming placements." Paused. That meant bills didn't. He read it twice, then closed the laptop without responding. An hour later, another message. Different client. Same tone. "We value our relationship." But at this time, he didn't finish it. He sat back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet for mid-afternoon. This was Daniel's version of pressure. No shouting, no threats on record, just doors closing. He pressed his thumb against the edge of the table again. Harder this time. He'd expected something. He hadn't expected it to move this fast. That evening, when he picked his daughter up from school, the black sedan wasn't there. That didn't make him relax. "Can we get pizza?" she asked, dropping her backpack onto his arm. "Special occasion?" She shrugged. "You look like you forgot something important." He almost smiled. "Pizza," he agreed. They walked 3 blocks to the corner place with a faded red awning. Inside, the air smelled like cheese and burnt crust. They took a booth near the window. She talked about a science quiz, a boy who cheated and got caught, the teacher who pretended not to notice until the very end. Ethan listened, really listened. He asked questions, nodded at the right moments, but part of him kept scanning the street outside. Reflections in the glass made it hard to see clearly. Halfway through her second slice, she paused. "Are we moving?" The question hit without warning. "No." She watched him carefully. "You promise?" He held her gaze. "Yes." He didn't know yet how he'd keep that promise. But he said it anyway. That night his phone rang just after midnight. Not unknown this time. "Vivian." He answered on the first vibration. "You were right about the assistant," she said without greeting. He sat up slowly on the edge of his bed. "What about her?" "She didn't log your clearance manually. It was pre-authorized." "By who?" A pause. It traces back to a board-level override. He exhaled once through his nose. "Daniel." It's his access code, she confirmed. Silence stretched between them. On the other end, he could hear faint background noise. Not office sounds. Something quieter. Home, maybe. He says he was reviewing vendor movements, she continued. He claims it was coincidence. And you? She didn't answer immediately. I'm still reviewing system logs, she said instead. That's not what I asked. Another pause. Longer. I think someone used the breach to reposition influence, she said carefully. If investor confidence drops, leadership shifts. And your leadership? Yes. The word carried weight. You think your brother set this up to weaken you? Ethan said. I think my brother believes he's protecting the company. That's not the same thing, no. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Why call me? He asked quietly. I needed to hear your voice, she said. The honesty caught him off guard. To measure what? He asked. Whether you sounded afraid. He almost laughed. And you don't. He looked toward the hallway where his daughter's door was closed. I am, he said. She was quiet for a second. That's useful, she replied. For who? For someone who still makes decisions carefully. He absorbed that. What happens now? He asked. I can't accuse him without proof, she said. Not publicly, so he keeps tightening the screws. Yes. And you? I need time. Time. Daniel was already shrinking his options. I don't have much of that, Ethan said. I know. Silence again. He could feel something shifting between them. Not alliance yet, but alignment. If you walk away, she said softly, this likely ends with you as the official explanation. And if I don't, it gets uglier. He considered that. He'd built his life around staying out of ugly, around keeping things stable. Predictable. He thought about the paused contracts, the email language that pretended neutrality. Then about Daniel mentioning his daughter. I'm not walking, he said, another quiet breath on the other end. Then neither am I, she replied. The words settled in his chest, heavy, real, not dramatic, just decided. Be careful, she added. You too. The line went dead. The next morning, the news cycle shifted. An online financial blog published a short piece. Tech firm faces internal data security concerns, no names, but the details were specific enough. Ethan read it standing in his kitchen. By noon, his phone buzzed again. A forwarded link. From Daniel. No message attached, just the article. Ethan stared at the screen, then set it down. He felt it now, not just pressure. Isolation. Daniel was shaping the narrative slowly, letting it grow on its own. If regulators stepped in, if audits began, a contractor caught on restricted footage would be easy to point at, disposable. He walked to the window and looked down at the street. A delivery truck idled at the curb. A woman argued into her phone while crossing against the light. Life kept moving. He rubbed his hand across his face once. Then his phone buzzed again, another unknown number. He almost didn't answer. But he did. A different voice this time. Female. You don't know me, she said quickly, but you need to be careful. Who is this? I work in compliance at the company. Daniel's preparing a formal internal report, she continued. It names you directly. His stomach tightened. When? 28 hours. Maybe less. Why tell me? A small pause. Because I've seen this before. That was all she offered. The line clicked off. Ethan stood there, phone still against his ear long after the call ended. 48 hours. He looked toward the hallway again. He thought about the promise he'd made over pizza. We're not moving. He reached for his jacket. There were moments when you could wait for things to unfold. And there were moments when waiting meant agreeing to the version someone else was writing. This wasn't the first kind. He stepped out of the apartment and closed the door behind him. Carefully. As if nothing had shifted at all, he didn't go to the office. Not right away. Instead, he took the train 3 stops past downtown and got off near the old municipal building where public records were stored. The place smelled like paper and dust and tired air conditioning. No one looked twice at him there. If Daniel was preparing a formal internal report, it would lean on procedure, policy violations, access logs, narrative shaped to look clean. Clean things leave traces. Ethan signed in at the front desk and requested filings tied to Armand Technologies over the last 18 months, regulatory disclosures, board adjustments, executive authority amendments. The clerk slid a stack of folders across the counter without interest. He took them to a corner table and sat down. For the first hour, nothing. Routine filings, investor summaries, predictable growth language. Then he found it. A board amendment from 6 months ago, quietly filed. It expanded temporary override permissions for emergency system access, justified under Rapid Security Response Protocol, approved unanimously, signed by Daniel. Vivian's signature was there too. He stared at it. Emergency override authority, that was the door. He flipped further. The language was broad. Too broad. It allowed a single board member to authorize access reassignments during threat mitigation. No secondary approval required. He leaned back slowly. Daniel hadn't broken policy. He'd built the policy. Ethan closed the folder and sat still for a moment. He wasn't angry, he was impressed. That unsettled him more. By late afternoon, he stood across the street from the glass tower again. He hadn't told Vivian about the records yet. He wanted to see something first. At 5:12 p.m., Daniel exited the building. No security detail, just confidence. He walked toward the same black sedan. Ethan crossed the street before he could talk himself out of it. Convenient timing, Daniel said without surprise when Ethan approached. You expanded your override authority 6 months ago, Ethan replied. Daniel opened the car door but didn't get in. That's public record. It allowed you to pre-authorize my badge access. For security purposes. For positioning. Daniel's expression didn't change. You're assuming motive, he said calmly. I'm observing patterns. A small smile touched Daniel's mouth. You're thorough. I respect that. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're preparing a report that names me. Daniel's eyes sharpened. So you do have sources. That report triggers an internal audit, if warranted. And once auditors are in, they don't stop at contractors. For the first time, Daniel's posture shifted slightly. Not weakness. Attention. You're suggesting I risk destabilizing my own company, Daniel said. I'm suggesting you're betting you can control the fallout. A beat. And can you? Daniel asked quietly. Ethan held his gaze. I don't know yet. The street noise filled the space between them. Daniel studied him for a long second. You think Vivian can survive this? He asked. She doesn't need to survive you. Daniel's jaw tightened almost invisibly. She's too careful, he said. Too hesitant. Leadership requires decisiveness. Or integrity. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the building behind them. You're not family, he said. No. Then you don't understand what's at stake. Ethan thought about his daughter's question in the pizza place. Are we moving? I understand enough, he said. Daniel opened the car door fully now. This ends one way, he said. You step back, accept the narrative, and it's over quickly. And if I don't? Daniel met his eyes. Then it won't be quick. He got into the car. The door shut. The sedan pulled away. Ethan stood in the fading light, feeling something solidify inside him. Daniel wasn't panicking. He was confident, which meant he believed Vivian would hesitate. That night, Vivian called again. He answered from the kitchen, voice low. He approached you, she said immediately. You saw? Yes. Do you have cameras on the street too? He asked. No. I have people who notice patterns. He leaned against the counter. He thinks you'll fold, Ethan said. A pause. He thinks I'll choose stability. And will you? Silence. He could hear her breathing this time. Slower than before. I signed that amendment, she said finally. I know. I believed it was necessary. At the time, yes. He waited. I didn't see how broadly it could be used, she continued. You trusted him. He's my brother. The word carried weight she didn't elaborate on. Ethan didn't push. Compliance warned me about the report, he said instead. I know who, she replied. He almost smiled. Of course you do. I've stalled the filing, she said, but not indefinitely. How long? 24 hours. Less than he'd hoped. You need proof of intent, he said. Yes. He walked to the window again, watching the street below. You won't find it in system logs, he said. He's too careful. I'm aware. Then look at timing. Timing. He expanded authority, then initiated security reviews, then positioned a breach during investor volatility. She was quiet for a moment. You think this is about control of the board. I think it's about control of you. Another long pause. When she spoke again, her voice had changed slightly. Less executive, more personal. He's been questioning my decisions for months, she said, suggesting I'm too measured, that I hesitate when I should act. And do you? Yes. The admission was soft. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Hesitation isn't weakness, he said. It can be. It can also keep you from destroying something you're trying to protect. Silence. Then, you're not what I expected, she said quietly. Neither are you. A faint exhale that might have been a restrained laugh. We don't have much time, she said. No. I'll confront him tomorrow, she continued, privately. That's risky. So is doing nothing. He considered that. If you do, he said, record it. Another pause. You think he'll admit it? I think he believes he's right. And people who believe they're right sometimes talk too much. She absorbed that. You're asking me to risk fracturing my family, she said. I'm asking you to protect your company. And you? He glanced toward the hallway again. I'm protecting mine. Silence stretched between them. Not awkward, just heavy. I'll call you after, she said. Be careful, you two. The line ended. Ethan stood there for a while, phone still in his hand. He didn't feel brave. He felt exposed. Like he'd stepped onto a narrow ledge and decided not to look down. Tomorrow would tilt something. He just didn't know which way. Vivienne didn't call the next morning. He told himself that was good. Confrontations took time. Controlled spaces. Closed doors. He walked his daughter to school anyway. Same route. Same crosswalk. The air felt thinner. She talked about a group project. He nodded at the right places. When she reached the steps, she turned back. You're doing the thinking face again, she said. I know. She hesitated, then hugged him quickly, tighter than usual, and ran inside. He stood there longer than he needed to. When his phone finally vibrated, it was almost noon. Not a call, a message, meet me. No greeting, no location. A second message followed with an address, not the office. A restaurant downtown, private rooms. He stared at the screen for a moment. Then he went. The restaurant was quiet in the early afternoon. Dark wood. Heavy curtains. The kind of place where conversations weren't meant to travel. A host led him down a narrow hallway and stopped at a closed door. She's inside. He nodded and stepped in. Vivienne stood near the window. No coat. Sleeves rolled up slightly, like she'd forgotten about appearances. She didn't look at him right away. For a second, he thought she might be steady. Then she turned. Her composure was intact, but something under it had cracked. He didn't deny it, she said. Ethan didn't speak. He said it was necessary, she continued. That volatility requires strength. That investor doubt spreads like infection. And you? He said I was too slow, that I hesitate until options disappear. She let out a short breath. He said framing you was efficient. The word hung there. Ethan felt it land somewhere deep and hard. Did you record it? He asked quietly. She held up her phone. Yes. A small nod. That's proof of intent. Yes. She didn't move. Neither did he. He believes I won't use it, she said after a moment. Will you? Her eyes flicked to his. He's my brother. He waited. She walked to the table and sat down slowly. He said if I escalate this publicly, it fractures the board, triggers instability, weakens the company. That's the leverage, Ethan said. Yes. Silence stretched. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat. You have proof he manipulated access, he said. Proof he positioned the breach narrative. And proof that I signed the amendment that allowed it. That's different. It won't look different. He studied her face. For the first time she looked unsure. Not calculating. Not guarded. Just weighing. He's not wrong about one thing, she said softly. This could destabilize everything. Ethan leaned back slightly. Then, what are you protecting? He asked. She didn't answer right away. He watched her think. Not in boardroom patterns. In something more personal. My father built this company, she said finally. From nothing. Daniel thinks protecting it means force. And you? I think it means restraint. He nodded once. Restraint isn't passive, he said. It's deliberate. Her eyes lifted to his. He said you're a liability, she said. That's convenient. Yes. A faint, almost unwilling curve touched her mouth. He underestimated you, she added. That happens. Silence again, but lighter this time. What do you want me to do? She asked. The question was direct, not executive, human. He felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders. I want you to choose what you can live with, he said. That's not strategic advice. No. She held his gaze. And if I expose him, then it gets loud. And if I don't, it gets quiet. The room felt smaller suddenly. She looked down at the table, fingers resting against the wood. I don't want quiet, she said. The words were soft. But steady. He nodded once. Then you already know. The fallout began faster than either of them expected. That evening, Vivian sent a confidential memo to the board. Included the recording. Included the override logs. Included the timing. She didn't call him before sending it. She called after. It's done, she said. He was standing at the sink, washing a plate. Okay. There will be an emergency session tomorrow. And Daniel? He's requested legal representation. Of course he had. You're sure about this? She asked. He turned off the water and dried his hands slowly. You didn't need me to be sure, he said. A small pause. No, she admitted. Outside, a car door slammed on the street. He walked to the window automatically. You're not alone in this, she said quietly. He didn't answer immediately. He wasn't used to hearing that. I know, he said finally. It felt strange, but not unwelcome. The next morning, news moved faster than expected. An anonymous leak, internal board conflict, power struggle, questions of governance. Daniel had moved too. He'd framed it as executive instability, accused Vivian of emotional decision-making, claimed the recording was edited. Ethan read the headlines from his kitchen table. He felt the shift. This wasn't contained anymore. His phone rang. Not Vivian. Daniel. He let it ring twice. Then answered. You should have stayed out of it, Daniel said calmly. You should have left my daughter out of it, Ethan replied. A pause. You think this ends well? Daniel asked. I think it ends honestly. That's naive. Maybe. Silence. You've made her choose, Daniel said. She chose. Another pause. She'll regret it. The line went dead. Ethan stood there with the phone still in his hand. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt the edge of something approaching. By noon, black SUVs were parked outside the company headquarters. Regulatory observers, board members arriving early. The story was no longer private, and neither were they. He didn't go to the building. He stayed home. Waited. Every sound outside felt amplified. Every vibration of his phone made his chest tighten. Late afternoon, finally, Vivian called. He answered without speaking. He's suspended, she said. Her voice was steady, but thin. The board voted? Yes. And the report? Withdrawn. He closed his eyes briefly. That's something, he said. Yes. Silence. He waited for relief to arrive. It didn't. This isn't over, she said quietly. No. He won't let it be. I know. Another pause. But it's shifted, she added. Yes. He leaned back against the wall. For the first time in days, the pressure felt different. Not gone. Just redirected. You protected me, she said. He almost corrected her. Instead, he said, you protected yourself. A faint breath on the other end. Thank you, she said. He didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure what exactly she was thanking him for. Then you should go home early, he said. I will. The call ended. He stood there in the quiet kitchen. The company hadn't collapsed, the world hadn't ended, but something fundamental had cracked open, and cracks didn't seal cleanly. He understood that. This wasn't resolution. It was exposure. And exposed, things were fragile. He walked down the hallway and paused outside his daughter's room. The promise he'd made still held. For now. He let out a slow breath. The danger hadn't disappeared. It had just changed shape. The suspension didn't quiet things. It sharpened them. By the third day, the board had split into careful factions. Investors were calling for statements. Analysts were circling like they'd been waiting for weakness to show itself. Daniel hadn't spoken publicly. That was what worried Ethan. People like him didn't retreat loudly. They adjusted. Vivian's name was everywhere now. Articles dissecting her leadership style. Old interviews replayed with new commentary layered over them. Words like measured and reserved recast as flaws. Ethan read enough to understand the direction. This wasn't about the breach anymore. It was about confidence. And confidence could be moved. He met Vivian that evening in her office, the real one this time. No security hovering outside. No glass walls with employees pretending not to listen. The city was dark beyond the windows. She stood behind her desk, jacket off, hair pulled back tighter than usual. You shouldn't be here, she said when he walked in. That sounds familiar. A faint exhale that might have been a restrained smile. It's not safe for you to be associated with this building, she said. I'm already associated. She didn't argue. He stepped closer. What aren't you saying? He asked quietly. Her eyes flicked up to his. He's consolidating proxies, she said, quietly, contacting smaller shareholders, suggesting instability. So he forces a confidence vote. Yes? And if he wins? She didn't answer. He watched her jaw tighten slightly. You lose the company, he said. Yes. The words settled heavy between them. You have the recording, he said. The logs. He's framing it as internal disagreement taken out of context. And investors? They don't like disagreement. Silence. He moved toward the window and looked down at the street. News vans were parked near the entrance. He's betting they prefer force over restraint, Ethan said. Yes. And he thinks you won't fight dirty. She looked at him sharply. I won't, she said. I know. That wasn't criticism. It was fact. She walked around the desk slowly. He approached you again, she said. It wasn't a question. No. But you expect he will. Yes. Another pause. He still believes your leverage, she added. Ethan felt that settle in his chest. He won't use my daughter again, he said. Her eyes softened slightly. I've increased security monitoring around your building, she said. He blinked once. You did what? Discreetly. That's not your responsibility. No, she agreed, but it's necessary. He absorbed that quietly. Daniel's not reckless, she continued. He's strategic. If he pushes now, it will be through financial channels, not personal threats, until those fail. Her silence was answer enough. The call came 2 days later, not from Daniel, from his bank. A flagged review on his mortgage application, temporary freeze pending verification of income stability. He closed his eyes briefly while the representative explained in neutral tones. Coincidence, maybe, but the timing felt deliberate. By afternoon, 2 more contracts had formally terminated. Risk mitigation, the email said. He sat at a kitchen table after hanging up. His daughter was at school. The apartment felt smaller than usual. He ran the numbers in his head. Savings would stretch, not comfortably, but enough. If things stabilized, his phone buzzed. Vivian. I saw the filings, she said without greeting. You have eyes everywhere. I have legal teams. He leaned back in his chair. He's leaning on external pressure, she continued, targeting perception of your stability. I noticed. A pause. I can counter some of it, she said. No. Silence. I won't be positioned as your hidden liability, he added. You're not a liability. That's not how this will look. She didn't argue. Instead, she said quietly, this is my fault. He frowned slightly. No, I brought you into this. You hired me for projections and exposed you to something else. He exhaled slowly. You didn't expand that override authority, he said. I signed it. Yes. Silence settled. He felt the weight of her guilt through the line. You don't get to carry all of it, he said. A quiet breath. That's not how leadership works. It is if you want it to last. She didn't respond to that. Instead, he's pushing for the confidence vote tomorrow, she said. Sooner than expected. Yes, and I need to address the board tonight. Privately. He sat up straighter. That's risky. So is waiting. He almost smiled at the echo. You're changing, he said. A faint pause. Yes. That evening she asked him to come. Not into the boardroom. Into the building. I need someone in the room who isn't calculating stock movement, she said. That's not a formal role. No. He hesitated, then agreed. He didn't sit at the table. He stood near the back wall while the board gathered. Men and women in expensive suits, faces controlled, voices low. Daniel entered last. He didn't look at Ethan. That felt deliberate. Vivian opened the meeting. No theatrics. No raised voice. She laid out the timeline. The override authority. The breach positioning. The recording. When she played it, the room went still. Daniel's voice filled the space. Calm. Justifying. Efficient. Necessary. He watched the faces around the table shift, some uneasy, some impressed. When the recording ended, silence held. Daniel spoke first. You're emotionalizing strategic decisions, he said to Vivian. Investors don't respond to restraint, they respond to strength. And strength requires deception? She asked evenly. It requires results. Murmurs around the table. Ethan stayed quiet, but he felt it. The tilt. This wasn't about right and wrong to them. It was about stability. Vivian's hands rested lightly on the table. I will not protect this company by sacrificing integrity, she said. Daniel's gaze flicked briefly toward Ethan at the back of the room. There it is, he said softly. Personal involvement clouding judgment. Several board members shifted. Ethan felt the implication land. He didn't move. Vivian didn't look back at him. Personal involvement, she repeated calmly. You've entangled an external contractor in internal politics, Daniel replied. That's not governance, that's liability. Eyes turned toward Ethan now. He met them without flinching. Vivian's voice remained steady. He was positioned, she said, by you. Daniel's expression didn't change. Prove intent, he said. Silence. The room held its breath. Vivian looked around the table. Intent is clear, she said. But if the board prefers confidence built on manipulation, then vote accordingly. She sat down. No dramatic finish. Just that. Ethan felt something settle inside him, not fear. Recognition. This was the moment, and it wouldn't be clean. No one voted that night. They adjourned instead, which meant they were counting, not principles, numbers. Daniel left first, calm, unhurried, as if the outcome was already arranged somewhere else. Vivian stayed seated after the room emptied. Her hands were still on the table. Flat. Steady. Ethan didn't approach right away. The boardroom felt different without voices in it. Larger. Colder. Finally, she stood. "How bad?" he asked. She didn't pretend not to understand. "Too close," she said. He nodded once. "That means he thinks he has it." "Yes." They walked out together, but not side by side. A few feet apart. Not deliberate. Just distance shaped by circumstance. In the hallway, she stopped. "If the vote goes against me tomorrow," she said, "there's a clause." He waited. "I retain minority authority for 30 days pending transition." "What does that give you?" "Access." "And him?" "Leverage." Silence. "He won't stop at removal," she added quietly. "He'll clean house," meaning anyone connected to her position. Anyone seen as aligned, including him. "I'll manage," Ethan said. She looked at him directly. "That's not what concerns me." He held her gaze. For a moment, something almost fragile moved between them. Then it was gone. "Go home," she said. "You too." He didn't sleep much that night. Every sound outside the apartment felt deliberate. Cars passing, footsteps on the stairs. He checked the locks twice, then a third time, not because he thought Daniel would send someone, because he understood escalation. And escalation rarely reversed itself politely. In the morning, he walked his daughter to school like nothing was happening. She skipped ahead of him for a few steps, then slowed. "You look tired," she said. "I am." "Bad dream?" "Something like that." She nodded thoughtfully. "You always fix things," she said. The words landed heavier than she knew. He didn't answer. At the school entrance, she hugged him quickly again. He held on a second longer than usual. Then, let go. The vote was scheduled for noon. Vivian didn't ask him to come this time. He stayed home. Waited. The waiting felt worse than the confrontation. At 11:47 a.m., his phone buzzed. Not her. An unknown number. He almost ignored it. He didn't. "Mr. Cole?" Female voice. Controlled. "Yes. This is Assistant U.S. Attorney Blake. We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding internal disclosures at Armand Technologies." His pulse shifted. "Am I under investigation?" he asked evenly. "Not at this time." "Not at this time. Then why call me today?" he asked. A small pause. "There's been a formal complaint filed this morning," she said, "alleging external coercion influencing corporate governance." He understood immediately. Daniel. He was reframing it, making Ethan the manipulator. "I didn't coerce anyone," he said. "We're aware of the broader context," she replied. "We just need your cooperation." Cooperation meant records, communications, scrutiny, the kind that drains time and resources. "Of course," he said. The call ended. He stared at the wall for a long moment. Daniel wasn't just fighting internally. He was widening the battlefield. His phone buzzed again. "Vivian." He answered. "He filed a complaint," she said immediately. "I know. They contacted you." "Yes." A pause. "I underestimated him," she said quietly. "He's not subtle. No. He's thorough." Silence stretched. "Where are you?" she asked. "At home." "Stay there." "That sounds familiar." "This isn't about caution," she said. "It's about control." He leaned against the kitchen counter. "The vote?" he asked. "Split," she said. "Too close to call." They postponed 24 hours. Another day. Another tightening. "He's trying to pressure swing votes," she added, "by making this public." "Yes." He ran a hand across his face slowly. "You should separate from me publicly," he said. "No. It would help. It would validate him." Silence. He thinks you're leverage, Ethan said. Make it clear I'm not. And how would you suggest I do that? She asked. He hesitated. Then, I'll step forward, he said. Into what? Into visibility. A pause. That's dangerous. Yes. You've avoided attention your entire career. I know. Silence again. If I speak, he continued, not defensively, just factually, lay out the timeline, the access amendment, the override, the breach positioning. You're not an executive, she said. No. You'll be painted as disgruntled. Probably. The quiet stretched between them. You don't know me that, she said softly. He looked toward the hallway again. I owe my daughter stability, he replied. And this helps how? If he frames me as shadow influence, it sticks. If I stand in daylight, it's harder to distort. She didn't respond immediately. He could almost hear her thinking. That's not your burden, she said finally. It already is. Another long pause. Then all right, she said. The word carried weight. We do it carefully, she continued. Controlled statement. Coordinated. Yes. And after, he said quietly, we see who values integrity when it costs something. The statement went out that evening. Short. Precise. No emotion. Ethan Cole, independent financial consultant, denies allegations of coercion. Provides documented timeline of events, including access irregularities authorized by board-level override. It wasn't flashy, but it was clear. The response was immediate. Media attention shifted slightly. Questions began pointing back toward Daniel. Not accusations. Questions. Sometimes that was enough. By midnight, investor commentary had softened. Not resolved, but reconsidering. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, phone face down. He felt exposed now. Visible, that wasn't comfortable, but it was chosen. His phone buzzed once more. Vivian. The swing boats shifted, she said quietly. He didn't speak. You being visible made it harder to spin, she continued. A small breath left him. Tomorrow? He asked. Yes. And Daniel? He's furious. That's not new. No. Silence. You didn't have to do that, she said again. I know. He leaned back in his chair. For the first time in days, the pressure felt balanced. Not gone, but shared. Whatever happens tomorrow, she said softly, this changed something. Yes. He knew that too, not just in the company. Inside him. He had stepped forward instead of back. And that choice didn't disappear after votes were counted. It stayed. Morning would settle the board, but tonight he felt the cost, and he felt the steadiness beneath it. He wasn't invisible anymore, and strangely, he didn't regret it. The vote happened without spectacle. No raised voices, no dramatic exits. Just names called, hands lifted, decisions recorded. Vivian called him an hour later. It's done, she said. He was sitting at the edge of his bed, shoes still on, and I remain. He closed his eyes for a moment. And Daniel? Removed from voting authority. Board seat under review pending external audit. Not expelled, not destroyed, but displaced. He'll fight that, Ethan said. Yes. Silence settled between them. Not tense this time, just tired. Are you safe? She asked. The question wasn't corporate. Yes. My legal team spoke with the U.S. Attorney's Office, she continued. The coercion claim isn't holding. Good. It never should have. No. Another pause. He overreached, she said quietly. Yes, and you didn't. He didn't answer that. He wasn't sure it was true. The next few days were slower, not calm, just slower. Media attention shifted toward the audit. Investors stabilized. Analysts found a new angle to dissect. Daniel remained silent publicly. That worried Ethan more than the noise had. He walked his daughter to school each morning. No black sedan. No unfamiliar faces lingering too long. The world felt almost ordinary again. Almost. A week later, Vivian asked him to meet her somewhere neutral. Not the office. A small park near the river. He arrived early, sat on a bench facing the water. The air was cool. Late afternoon light softening the edges of the buildings. She approached without announcement. No security, no assistant. Just her. She sat beside him. Not too close. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The river moved steadily in front of them. Quiet. Unimpressed by corporate drama. It's settling, she said finally. Yes, the audit will take months. It usually does. A faint exhale. They've asked me to narrow emergency override powers, she continued. That's wise. Yes. She folded her hands loosely in her lap. I've spent years proving I'm not weak, she said. He didn't interrupt. And I confuse restraint with hesitation, she added. He watched the water. They're not the same, he said. I know that now. Silence. She turned slightly toward him. You could have walked away, she said. Yes. Most would have. Most don't have someone watching them that closely. She followed his gaze to the water. Your daughter, she said. Yes. A pause. She must think you're brave. He shook his head slightly. She thinks I fix things. Vivian's mouth curved faintly. That's harder. Another stretch of quiet. The tension that had defined every conversation before felt thinner. Not gone. But no longer pressing. I owe you, she said. No. Yes. He looked at her. You owe me a completed contract, he said. A brief, real smile this time. That too. The moment passed without awkwardness. He noticed that not everything between them needed weight anymore. Daniel reached out 2 days later. Not through threats, through a message. We should talk. Ethan stared at it for a long time before replying. Public place. They met in a hotel lobby downtown. Neutral ground. Daniel looked the same as always. Composed, measured. But something in his posture had shifted. Less certainty. I misjudged you, Daniel said without preamble. Ethan didn't respond immediately. Yes, he said finally. Daniel's lips pressed together briefly. You made this personal. You did. Silence. Daniel glanced around the lobby. I believed I was protecting something, he said. At any cost, Ethan replied. Yes. A pause. And now? Ethan asked. Daniel held his gaze. Now I'm recalibrating. That sounded like him. I won't come after you, Daniel added. I know. Daniel studied him for a moment. You don't seem satisfied. I'm not looking for satisfaction. Then what? Ethan considered the question. Stability, he said. Daniel nodded once. That's expensive, he replied quietly. Yes. They sat in silence for a few seconds longer. Then Daniel stood. I hope for her sake, he said, that she's right about you. Ethan didn't ask what that meant. He watched Daniel walk away, not defeated, just altered. That evening, Ethan sat at the kitchen table while his daughter worked on homework. The apartment felt the same, but he didn't. You're not doing the thinking face, she said suddenly. He blinked. I'm not. No. She returned to her math problems. He sat there quietly. She was right. The tightness that had lived behind his eyes for weeks had eased, not because everything was fixed, but because he hadn't stepped back when it mattered. He'd always believed safety meant staying unnoticed, invisible, clean. Now he understood something different. Sometimes safety came from standing still when pressure tried to move you. Not loudly, just steadily. His phone buzzed once. A message from Vivian. Board approved revised governance structure. It's done. He looked at the words for a moment, then typed back. Good. A second later. Thank you. He didn't overthink his reply. Take care of it. Another pause. I will. He set the phone down. Across the table, his daughter looked up. Did you fix it? She asked. He thought about that. about votes and recordings and threats delivered in quiet voices, about the choice to step forward. "Yes," he said. She nodded, satisfied, and went back to her work. He leaned back in his chair. The experience hadn't made him louder. It hadn't made him ambitious. It had done something smaller, but deeper. He no longer confused silence with safety, and he no longer mistook visibility for danger. He had stood inside something heavy and didn't fold. That mattered. Not because anyone saw it, but because he did. Outside, the city moved the way it always had, indifferent, alive. Inside the apartment, the air felt steady, earned. He reached for his coffee, now cold, and drank it anyway. It didn't taste good, but it was real. And that was enough. The audit findings were released on a gray Tuesday morning. No drama, no surprise announcement, just a formal document uploaded before markets opened. Ethan read it at the kitchen table while his daughter finished cereal across from him. The language was clinical. Override authority used within policy boundaries but inconsistent with governance intent. Security breach facilitated through procedural manipulation. No evidence of external coercion by contractor Ethan Cole. He let out a slow breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding for weeks. His daughter squinted at him. That was a big breath. "Yeah." "Good or bad?" "Good." She nodded and reached for more milk. The world outside didn't shift. No applause. No vindication parade. Just quiet correction. Daniel's board seat was formally revoked by afternoon. Statement released about differences in strategic philosophy. That sounded cleaner than what it was. Ethan didn't feel triumph. He felt something else. An unwinding. Vivian called later that evening. Not from the office. He could hear faint city noise behind her. "Wind, maybe." "It's officially closed," she said. "Yes. They offered me expanded oversight powers, and I declined." He smiled slightly. "That sounds like you. It sounds like restraint." "It is." A small pause. "I've been thinking about what you said," she continued. "About silence and safety." He leaned against the counter. "I didn't mean it as advice." "I know." Wind moved across her microphone for a moment. "I built my career on control," she said. "Controlled reactions, controlled risks, controlled narratives. And I let someone else control the terms." He didn't interrupt. "I won't do that again," she added quietly. He believed her. Not because she sounded strong, because she sounded settled. "Daniel won't disappear," she said. "No. But he won't underestimate me again." "No." Silence stretched. "Comfortable now. I'd like you to continue the projections work," she said after a moment. He let that sit. "You're sure that's wise?" he asked. "Yes. It won't look like favoritism. It will look like confidence." He considered that. The work had always been the simplest part. "All right," he said. Another quiet exhale on the other end. "Thank you." He didn't answer that this time. He didn't need to. The next week felt almost normal. He returned to the office through the front entrance. No security escort. No whispers loud enough to catch. Some employees looked at him differently now. Not suspicious. Curious. He ignored it. Vivian's office door was open when he arrived. She looked up briefly, then gestured him in without ceremony. No dramatic reunion. Just work. They went through financial adjustments line by line. Budget shifts, investor messaging recalibrated, governance revisions mapped carefully. At one point she paused. "Do you regret it?" she asked. He looked up from the document. "Regret what?" "Not walking away." He thought about that, about the late nights. The bank call. The fear that had settled in his chest when Daniel mentioned his daughter. "No," he said. She held his gaze for a moment. "Neither do I." And that was that. One evening, weeks later, he picked his daughter up from school and they walked by the river instead of heading straight home. The air carried early signs of spring. She kicked at loose gravel near the path. "You look different," she said suddenly. "How?" "I don't know." She squinted at him. "Less tight." He laughed softly. Is that good? Yes. They walked in silence for a bit. Did something bad almost happen? She asked. He stopped walking. She looked up at him. He didn't lie. Yes. She waited. But it didn't, he added. Because you fixed it. He thought about the boardroom, the recording, the statement he chose to sign, the moment he decided not to step back. No, he said slowly, because we didn't let it. She seemed to consider that, then nodded. Okay. She reached for his hand. He took it. They stood there a moment longer, watching the river move past them. Unrushed. Months later, when the headlines had faded completely, Ethan found himself in Vivian's office again. Late evening. City lights on. She handed him a revised governance charter draft. Emergency override authority narrowed. Dual signatures required. Transparency triggers embedded. Better? She asked. Yes. She leaned back in her chair. You changed something in me, she said. He didn't respond immediately. You reminded me that restraint isn't fear, she continued, and that visibility isn't weakness. He met her eyes. You chose that, he said. Yes. A faint smile. And you? She asked. What about me? What changed? He looked out at the city for a moment. He thought about how carefully he had lived before. How quietly, how determined he'd been to avoid attention at any cost. I used to think safety meant staying out of reach, he said slowly. And now I think it means standing where you need to stand. She nodded once. That was enough. No speeches, no promises. Just understanding. That night, back in his apartment, he sat at the kitchen table after his daughter went to bed. The room was quiet, not tense, just quiet. He let himself replay it all. The open door, the footsteps in the hallway. The moment he realized someone else had already chosen his role for him. He had stepped back at first, out of habit. Then, he had stepped forward, not because he was fearless, because something mattered more than staying unnoticed. He rested his elbows on the table and stared at nothing in particular. He didn't feel heroic. He didn't feel exceptional. He felt steadier. The kind of steady that comes after you've tested something inside yourself and it didn't break. Outside, traffic moved in distant waves. Inside, the air held still. He got up, checked the lock once, and turned off the kitchen light. In the dark hallway, he paused outside his daughter's room. Listened to her breathing. Even. Untroubled. He stood there a few seconds longer than necessary, then went to bed. The world hadn't changed. Companies still fought over power. People still justified what they wanted to do. But inside him, something had shifted. He no longer mistook quiet for safety, and he no longer avoided the light when it found him. He had stood in it and stayed. That was enough.